Good evening, everybody. Guess who I've got with me? Jason Clarke is here tonight with CHAPPAQUIDDICK. One of the great things about the film festival is we keep a few little TBA spots for things that might be coming up. And we were hearing such a great word on the block about CHAPPAQUIDDICK coming out of Toronto. And you will be one of the first American audiences to see it tonight. Yes. And I think you'll also get a sense, especially, how many of you saw Mudbound the other night? Mm-hmm. So this is a very different side of Jason that you're about to see. Welcome to Mill Valley Film Festival.
Thank you very much.
And would you like to say something about the film before we see it?
Yeah, listen, it's it's my first time here. It was a great feeling driving into this town. It seems like a wonderful community. You see it in the theatre here, a community that obviously cares about the world it exists in. I think CHAPPAQUIDDICK, along with Mudbound, two similar films from two similar filmmakers, and I hope you love it because you are some of the first to see it, and that's exciting for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that was an incredibly convincing and compelling performance. I'm very, very impressed. And the Spotlight Award is presented by the Mill Valley Film Festival to spotlight a moment in a person's artistic career. And at this moment, you have a tremendous performance with this film, CHAPPAQUIDDICK. You have Mudbound, and on behalf of the California Film Institute, please accept the Mill Valley Film Festival Spotlight Award.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the film. You guys are, as we said, some of the first to see it, and it's nice to walk into a house full of people and watched a movie that I am very proud of. Two movies that I'm very proud of, actually. You saw Mudbound as well. I appreciate it. I really do. I really do. It's been a long journey. I'm a foreigner in this country. It's always been very good to me, and tonight is yet another, generous hand extended from the United States of America, and I appreciate it very much. I really do. And it's a classy statue as well, really.
So, you're mentioning, yeah, you okay there? Yeah, we've just seen you in two very, very American films. So, you grew up in Australia. What was your sense of the Kennedys from afar? What was your sense of the Kennedy mythology as somebody who grew up in Australia?
Yeah, I mean, I was... my father wanted to call me Armstrong. He has a first name. My father's a sheep shearer from outback Queensland. And he wanted to call me Armstrong because I was delivered on the day they set off for the moon. So it was just one of those, those weird things that I always kind of, was always in my consciousness. I mean, when Mum told me that you could have been Armstrong. What? Well, actually, that could have been Frank. What? So even on set when they were watching the posters, like when you see that scene when I'm on the telephone, and you can just see the 1969 regatta, July 18. They were huge in my concept, particularly coming to America, particularly Joe Kennedy, in the beginning, and all the research. I love doing the research and reading, particularly a book called The Patriarch about Joe Kennedy and their imprint on America and the world for basically the 20th century. And I think it still carries on today.
But so at what point did you realize that your birthday coincided with CHAPPAQUIDDICK? I mean, that is bizarre.
Yeah, that was bizarre. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't until I did all the research that I realised it happened. You know, when they took off for the moon.
Right, same
You know,
time,
and
yeah.
John has a bunch of references with that. You know, with the spaceship at the beginning and
Yeah.
the moon throughout it.
Right.
Yeah, you know, it's
Right.
particularly important for Ted because it was 10 years. You know, that JFK had said, you know, 10 years man moon, and then
Right.
put that into effect. A monumental achievement, and then, you
Yeah.
know, that day Ted found himself going through this.
Indeed. Yeah, times have a way of pulling the rug out from under you.
Sure, thank you. You know, on Mudbound, you know, I play, and I wanted to play a good, kind, decent man who was a racist. You know, and I like the fact that, you know, and I like the fact there's an article in the Times in England recently that, you know, which said, you know, there's no, hey, here's all the bad white people and here's the good white person. You know, he didn't let anything off the hook there. Wasn't portray anything badly or demonise anything, but played honestly. You know, so there was that, and then the other side of that, you know, I took a road trip with Garrett. You know, Garrett and I, to Bond as brothers, drove from Memphis to New Orleans, down where the film was set. You know, if I can, I'll try to do something physical to touch the place or the space, or you know, feel the energy of something. If you can find somebody's energy, you know, and then connection to my brother. With Ted, you know, I'd spent a lot of time in Rhode Island doing a series called Brotherhood. I met Ted many years ago very quickly. I watched a lot of footage. I managed to get hold of some private, you know, some footage of Ted sailing with Joe, and I just, you know, I really went down the rabbit hole. It's such a fascinating time, you know, in history. For his, you know, he was baptized in the Vatican. He grew up as a boy in London when his father was ambassador to England, to the US in World War II. He's worked with the SEC. He's worked with, you know, getting Roosevelt elected and then re-elected. I love the research on it. I really did. You know, all of Jack's speeches and you know, and Bob's speeches, and you know, there's so much good journalism around it. Even, you know, RFK's journey from, you know, McCarthy's right-hand man to being, you know, the great liberal poster boy for, you know, Barack and President Obama and President Clinton. You know, there's so much amazing material there. I couldn't get enough of it, to be honest. And then the teeth helped. It took a lot of work to get those teeth right, you know, because initially we built the big ones. They were too big for my jaw, and we still want to get that, you know, that smile. And then to be able to speak in there, they had to be so thin because they were just, after a full day, they'd rip my mouth to shreds if they weren't exactly right. You know, and then, you know, dentalising my T's and D's. So you just slowly find it, the hair, you know, everything. You put it together, and then, you know, hopefully you find yourself just clicking at some point.
You said you met him at one point?
Yes, very quickly.
What were the circumstances around
A boat race.
Oh.
The Fagawi in Rhode Island. It's like a fun boat race that kicks off the serious boating race. And Ted had a big, beautiful boat, and I was shooting Brotherhood there and said hello to him. Someone introduced me. Yes, this lady down the front's been asking for the hand. Oh, fine. There's a computer there.
It was unbelievable hell watching that film for me. I don't know. I think it maybe took me 2 or 3 years to stop having nightmares, imagining her in those 23 minutes, you know, calling for help. But I just double-checked something, and I remember that he didn't stop with his carousing and partying, and it ended up being very harmful to his nephew. And there was a case, you know, where he and his nephew were out carousing, and
Oh, you mean many years later in Palm
and his
Beach?
nephew had been accused, and he was acquitted wrongfully, in my opinion, of raping Patricia Bowman. Now, I just looked this up, and to my horror, Willie Kennedy Smith, A, became a doctor, B, has been sued and paid off 2 women who were accused him of
I agree. I feel like that's part of the point of the film. You know, that's what I meant to say when it's not a dormant film. I don't think we didn't set out to make a film that sits in the past, or that you can sit and safely say this is whatever. You know, I think John has put some very audible. You know, I mean, how do we feel about everything that's come? When there was a review in Variety about, you know, a reckoning, and I agree. You know, what do we learn? What do we cast? What are we doing about it? Thank you very much.
So I think we've got time for maybe one last question.
We do two more. We'll do one.
Okay.
Thank you.
How did you get into acting? What's your next project?
My next project is Damien Chazelle's movie First Moon. So I go to NASA in a couple of days to train as an astronaut, which is actually, you know, it's about the dudes that were up on the moon when this happened, which is funny, but I'm enjoying it. I got into it, I was at law school and I was a bad student. I just used to watch movies all day, and then my best friend was at medical school and he said, I want to become an actor. I said, that sounds interesting. And we went down a long road, ended up going to drama school, and that's how I got into it, really, you know, yeah. I never really, you know, my father was a shearer, so I never really knew there was an acting was a job. And then I discovered through my friend that you could study, or you could work, or you could find a way, and there was a path. Yeah, thank you, though.
Thank you.
Thanks, sorry. I came over with Philip Noyce in a film called Rubber-Proof Fence, which actually played here many years ago. Yeah. Yeah, Philip had a lot of good memories. Sir.
Last question.
So we had the joy of listening to Dee Reese after Mudbound, and she gave a very specific discussion about how she directs, which is quite fascinating. Now, we've been able to see you twice in 1 week. Can you contrast the directing style in the two films and how it affects you as an actor?
Oh, it affects you immensely, how a director works with you. I mean, a huge amount. And very different styles. John was very tough on me. Like, very tough. Very, you know, he really, you know, the pace of the movie, it's a very methodical pace. You know, it's very precise, and, you know, I think sometimes you can think, okay, it's a precise rendition of a story that happened, but no, it leads you down a path that goes towards the very end. And I think if you connect all your dots and do them properly, you can say what John is saying at the end, or you can put that in there rightfully so, without being, like, gratuitous, or let's try and make the ending interesting. So he was very, very he would knock a lot out of me and really just keep going further and further down. Particularly that scene when I'm on the phone to, you know, I ring my father, I ring, you know, Mrs. CHAPPAQUIDDICK, then I ring my father, then I ring, you know, my assistant, you know, I ring, you know, I forget his name, I forget now. You know, he really beat me up on that day, and I didn't really know what I was doing at a certain point. You know, in terms of showing emotion. Ted has a very interesting relationship with death and pain and emotion. You know, and it was very important for him to show that it wasn't, you know, Ted's just not, he's been through so much grief and pain, and then the public and the non-public, and what's, you know, his sense of responsibility and guilt. So John was, you know, he really shoved me around to find different levels of what's what there. Dee was just inspiring. I mean, we worked so hard on that film. That's a massive, big film for the budget and the time that we shot it. To get 6 storylines in, you know, in a 10-year period with, you know, a great war in the middle was a phenomenal achievement, I thought. Because often on those films they just shrink, you know, into a 2-character or 3-character narrative. And you know, her ability to move from different storyline, a different actor, a different way of talking to different actors. I mean, she talked to us all very differently too, about what she needed to push things around. You know, Dee's a wonderful woman, as you met her. She's extraordinary. She really is. Does that answer your question?
That was great. Jason Clarke, thank you so much.